After all, he wants to raise kids in a place where opportunities are limited from the start. What makes Harvey particularly frustrating is that its location should be a considerable advantage. It is situated right next to Chicago, with easy access to major highways and public transportation. In theory, it should be a commuter's dream. However, instead of being a gateway to opportunity, it has become a case study in how mismanagement, poverty, and crime can drag a community down. So let's ask the tough question. Would you move to a place where your paycheck barely stretches, your child's education lags behind, and your personal safety feels like a daily gamble? Harvey proves that location alone doesn't guarantee success. Without investment, leadership, and real opportunity, it's just another dot on the map, struggling to hold on. Number 7, Mount Vernon. Mount Vernon might sound like a wholesome small-town gem in southern Illinois, but the reality is a little less Hallmark movie and a little more true crime documentary. This town with about 14,600 residents carries a violent crime rate of 7.42 per 1,000 people, well above both state and national averages. To put that in perspective, your chances of being a victim of violent crime in many larger cities. Small town, big crime problem. But safety isn't Mount Vernon's only struggle. The economic picture is just as bleak. The median household income sits around $41,000, compared to the U.S. average of over $75,000. Poverty impacts nearly 20% of the population, and local job opportunities don't exactly scream a bright future. Manufacturing has dwindled, retail is shaky, and most high-paying jobs are out of reach. If you're thinking about relocating here for affordability, remember that cheap rent means very little if there's no paycheck to cover it. Education, the schools in Mount Vernon struggle to meet state benchmarks, leaving families with limited options. And let's not forget infrastructure. Roads, utilities, and community resources all reflect years of underinvestment. Want to build a future here? Be ready to dodge potholes, literally and figuratively. What makes Mount Vernon so frustrating is that it appears to be thriving. It has historic architecture, a central location near interstates, and that quintessential Midwestern charm on the surface. But scratch the surface, and the cracks show, both in the pavement and in the stats. You can't build a thriving community on charm alone. Safety, jobs, and schools actually matter. So here's the thought. Would you risk moving your family to a town where you're more likely to face crime, struggle with low wages, and worry about your child's education? Mount Vernon proves that appearances can be deceiving. It might seem like a safe bet for those chasing small-town life, but the data tells a very different story. Ultimately, Mount Vernon is a place where reality falls short of the brochure's promises. It's got the look of a friendly Midwestern hub, but the experience of living here is closer to a cautionary tale. And if safety and opportunity are at the top of your checklist, this is one Illinois town that's not worth the gamble. Number 6, Springfield. Yes, we've landed in the capital of Illinois. Springfield is supposed to be the crown jewel, home to Abraham Lincoln's legacy, the state government, and a dose of Midwestern pride. But when you peel back the glossy brochures and history tours, you find a city that struggles with crime, stagnant growth, and a nagging sense that it's not living up to its potential. For a capital, Springfield feels more like a city on autopilot, and not the good kind. Let's start with safety. Springfield consistently reports violent crime rates well above the Illinois average. Residents here have about a 1 in 100 chance of being a victim of violent crime, according to FBI data. Property crime is no picnic either. Burglary and theft reports keeping people on edge. For a mid-sized city of around 113,000 residents, those numbers don't exactly inspire confidence. Now, you'd think having state government jobs would cushion the economy, but that's not the whole story. The median household income is approximately $55,000, which is still well below the national average of $75,000. Add to that a struggling private sector, limited new investment, and rising living costs. And Springfield becomes less a land of opportunity and more a bureaucratic waiting room. Yes, it's affordable compared to Chicago, but affordability doesn't matter much if you're trading it for higher crime and stagnant wages. Schools? They struggle. Springfield's public schools rank below the state average in both math and reading proficiency. efficiency, leaving families wondering if their children will have to work harder for the same opportunities found elsewhere. Infrastructure. Let's just say the city's roads and utilities feel like they've been patched together with duct tape and good intentions. And here's the irony. Springfield has everything it needs to succeed. It's the capital, boasting historical landmarks that attract tourism, and it occupies a central location in the state. However, despite all that, it continues to appear on worst places to live lists, including those by Money in several crime-based rankings. That's not a coincidence. It's a sign of mismanagement and lack of growth. So ask yourself, would you want to raise a family in a place where your paycheck is low, your safety feels uncertain, and your kids' schools underperform? Springfield is proof that being the capital doesn't automatically make you a city worth moving to. At best, it's a reminder that titles and reputations don't always match reality. We're halfway through the countdown. If you are enjoying the video so far, hit the like button, subscribe to Virtual Travel by Brian, and ring the notification bell for more informative content. Let's get back into it. Number 5, Rockford. Rockford is Illinois' third largest city, but instead of bragging rights, it's often carrying a reputation no city wants, being one of the most dangerous places in the state. With a population of approximately 147,000, Rockford may appear to be a vibrant regional hub on the map, but the statistics tell a different story. Violent crime here is consistently among the highest in Illinois. According to FBI data, residents face a 1 in 89 chance of becoming a victim of violent crime. That's the kind of statistic that makes even locals double-check their locks before bed. And crime isn't the only headline. Rockford has battled economic struggles for decades. Once a proud manufacturing city, deindustrialization hit it hard. Unemployment has remained above state averages. And while there's been some effort to diversify the economy, many neighborhoods still feel the sting of factories that closed long ago. The median household income hovers around $49,000, which is far below the national average, and approximately 22% of residents live in poverty. When nearly 1 in 4 people are struggling to make ends meet, that affordable cost of living suddenly feels a lot less appealing. Schools don't provide much relief either. Rockford Public Schools have faced challenges with performance and funding, ranking below state averages in both math and reading proficiency. Families moving here often discover that educational outcomes don't match their expectations. And infrastructure? Let's just say that potholes might outnumber the parking spaces. What makes Rockford particularly frustrating is that it has potential. It sits along the Rock River, has cultural attractions, and is strategically located between Chicago and Milwaukee. But those positives are often overshadowed by crime stats and struggling neighborhoods. It's like a car with a shiny paint job but a sputtering engine. You can admire it from the outside, but would you trust it for a road trip? The city has made attempts to revitalize downtown, attract new businesses, and improve livability. But when crime rates remain high and poverty continues to drag down the community, progress feels like it's moving at a snail's pace. So here's the big question. Would you move to a city where your odds of being a crime victim are among the worst in the state and where economic growth feels stuck in neutral? Rockford may have big city amenities, but until it addresses its safety and economic issues, it's not the kind of big most people are looking for. Number 4. East St. Louis. East St. Louis has long been a headline maker, but not for the reasons the city wants. Once a thriving industrial hub along the Mississippi River, it is now better known for its sky-high crime rates, deep poverty, and a reputation that makes even lifelong Illinois residents shake their heads. At times, East St. Louis has held the dubious honor of having the highest per capita homicide rate in the entire country. Think about that. Not just Illinois. Not just the Midwest, the whole United States. That kind of statistic puts it in a league of its own, and unfortunately, it's the wrong one. For a city of roughly 18,000 residents, the violent crime rate is shocking. FBI data has repeatedly ranked East St. Louis as one of the most dangerous places to live, with violent crime rates 5 to 6 times higher than the national average. That means the odds of being caught in a violent encounter here aren't just high, but practically baked into daily life. property crime isn't much better. Burglary, theft, and vandalism adding insult to injury. And crime isn't the only struggle. East St. Louis faces crippling poverty, with over 30% of residents living below the poverty line. Median household income, just around $26,000, one of the lowest figures in the entire state. Add in failing infrastructure, roads filled with potholes, aging public buildings, and neglected utilities, and you start to wonder how residents make it work at all. Schools haven't escaped the spiral either. Many underperform compared to state averages, leaving families with limited educational opportunities for their kids. The city's decline is a classic example of what happens when deindustrialization, systemic neglect, and lack of investment fail. Once proud factories now stand as rusty reminders of better days. Even attempts at revitalization have struggled against the weight of decades of decline. And here's where the sarcasm writes itself. East St. Louis is literally across the river from the Gateway Arch, one of America's most iconic symbols of opportunity and progress. Yet for many residents, opportunity feels like it's on the other side of a wall they can't climb. So would you want to live in a place where your safety is constantly at risk, your income barely covers the basics, and your infrastructure feels abandoned? East St. Louis isn't just a struggling city, it's a cautionary tale. Until real, lasting change comes, this town will continue to top lists for all the wrong reasons. Yeah. Number 3, Peoria. Peoria has long carried the nickname, "Will it play in Peoria?" A phrase once used to test whether something would appeal to mainstream America. Well, if we're testing safety, stability, and livability, the answer today is a resounding no. It won't play here. With a population of about 111,000, Peoria is the largest city on this countdown so far, but size clearly doesn't guarantee quality. The city reports a violent crime rate of 1,213 incidents per 100,000 residents, which is nearly 291% above the national average. In other words, you're more likely to get mugged in Peoria than entertained. But crime isn't Peoria's only problem. The local economy has been wobbling for years. Caterpillar, the iconic machinery giant once headquartered here, moved its global HQ out of Peoria in 2017, taking prestige and jobs with it. That departure hit hard, and the city has been trying to recover ever since. The median household income is approximately $55,000, which lags behind the national average, while poverty affects nearly 20% of residents. Combine shaky wages with high crime, and Peoria becomes less heart-willable and more heartburn. Education doesn't help balance the scales either. Peoria public schools rank below average in both math and reading proficiency, making it difficult for families to feel confident about their kids' futures. Add in the fact that property crime is also rampant. Burglaries, thefts, vandalism. You start to see why so many lists rank Peoria as one of the worst places to live in the state. Here's the kicker. Peoria has the bones of a city that should succeed. It's a regional hub situated along the Illinois River, featuring cultural attractions, healthcare centers, and vibrant neighborhoods. But all that potential is constantly overshadowed by high crime, weak economic growth, and an image problem it just can't shake. So let's ask the obvious. Would you relocate to a city where the odds of facing violent crime are almost 3 times the national average, where job opportunities have been shrinking, and where schools are struggling to prepare the next generation? That's not a relocation dream. Okay. It's a relocation nightmare. Peoria proves that reputation and reality can part ways quickly. Once the benchmark of Middle America, it's now an example of what happens when industry leaves, poverty rises, and crime fills the gap. And unless significant investment and reform take place, Peoria's future looks less like a comeback story and more like a warning sign. Number 2, Danville. Danville, Illinois is one of those places that always seems to pop up on the most dangerous and worst places to live lists. And unfortunately, it's not by mistake. With a population of about 28,000, Danville has the dubious honor of being one of the most crime-ridden metro areas in the state. The violent crime rate here is so high that residents have a 1 in 67 chance of becoming a victim, according to FBI data. That makes Danville the second most dangerous city in the state of Illinois. For context, that's worse than many major cities that get far more media attention. Crime is just the opening act. The economy is shaky at best, with the median household income sitting at around $42,000, far below the national average of $75,000. Nearly 25% of residents live below the poverty line, which makes it challenging for the community to pull itself out of the cycle of decline. Job opportunities are limited, especially in higher-paying sectors, and much of the city's economic base has shifted toward low-wage work. If you're moving here for affordability, be warned. Cheap living costs don't mean much when your paycheck barely covers the basics. And then there's the housing market. Yes, homes are inexpensive, with values well under $100,000 in many cases. But what kind of investment are you really making if property crime, blight, and declining demand keep eating away at long-term value? Buying a house in Danville is like buying a boat with holes in it. You'll spend more time bailing water than enjoying the ride. Schools don't paint a much better picture. Academic performance falls below state averages, leaving families worried about the futures of their kids. Infrastructure is also struggling. Pothole-ridden roads, aging utilities, and limited investment make daily life a grind. Add all these factors together, and it's no wonder why people continue to leave. Danville has experienced a significant decline in population over the years, and unless changes are made, that trend is unlikely to reverse. Here's the real question. Would you risk uprooting your family for a place where safety is questionable, schools underperform, and jobs are scarce? That's not just a bad decision. It's setting yourself up for frustration. Danville may have history and location on its side, but its current reality tells a different story. High crime rates, limited economic opportunities, and poor infrastructure have turned it into one of the least desirable towns in Illinois. It's not a place you move to. It's a place people try to move from. Number 1, Chicago Heights. Chicago Heights takes the top spot on this list, and not because it's secretly a hidden gem. This suburb of Chicago has earned its title as the worst town to live in Illinois, thanks to a violent crime rate that makes even hardened Chicagoans raise an eyebrow. According to FBI statistics, Chicago Heights reports 1,737 violent crimes per 100,000 people. That's about 460% higher than the state average. Translation: your odds of getting caught up in something dangerous here are astronomically higher than almost anywhere else in Illinois. But crime is only half the nightmare. The economy isn't faring much better. The median household income sits around $55,000. Still below the national average, while nearly 25% of residents live below the poverty line. Poverty plus high crime? That's a cocktail no city wants to be served. And while it's technically part of the Chicago metro area, Chicago Heights doesn't get the shine of downtown or the stability of wealthier suburbs. Instead, it's stuck in a cycle of struggling schools, weak job growth, and neighborhoods that feel forgotten by development. Speaking of schools, educational outcomes here are discouraging. Test scores are consistently below state benchmarks, leaving families with fewer options for quality education. And infrastructure? Let's just say the streets, utilities, and public resources are as overworked as the residents trying to make ends meet. You'd expect a Chicago suburb to feel connected and thriving. Instead, Chicago Heights feels more like the city's neglected stepchild. Now here's where it gets ironic. Housing here is cheap, with median home prices hovering under $150,000. But ask yourself, what's the value of a bargain if it comes with sky-high crime, poor schools, and limited opportunity? It's like being offered a great deal on a car that won't start. You're not saving money, you're buying problems. What's most sobering is that Chicago Heights isn't a ghost town like Cairo or a tiny village like Brooklyn. This is a city of nearly 27,000 people, and many of them are working hard to build their lives. But when the numbers stack against you at every turn, crime, poverty, education, infrastructure, it's a battle uphill in the snow without shoes. So here's the final thought. Would you risk moving to a place where your safety, stability, and future are compromised from the start? Chicago Heights isn't just Illinois' most dangerous town. It's the one that proves not every suburb is a safe haven. Sometimes it's just another headline waiting to happen. And there you have it. The top 10 worst towns to live in Illinois right now. For From crumbling infrastructure and failing schools to crime rates that make your GPS reroute in self-defense, these towns remind us that not every spot in Illinois is worth planting roots. But here's the thing. Behind every statistic are real people working hard to make change, which makes these places more than just numbers on a list. So, what do you think? Did any of these towns surprise you, or did they confirm what you already suspected? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear your take. And if you're researching where to live, places to avoid, or relocation tips, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the next deep dive into America's best and worst places to call home. Until next time, this is Virtual Travel by Vernon, reminding you, moving is easy, but regretting where you move, that's the real nightmare. Pontiac might share its name with a classic American car, but let's be honest, the town itself is running on fumes. Located about 30 miles north of Detroit, Pontiac has been revving its engine in neutral for decades, and the results aren't pretty. Once a proud hub of the auto industry, the city is now better known for plant closures, abandoned factories, and a local economy that never seemed to recover from its last crash. Numbers don't lie. The poverty rate here sits at nearly 30%. According to U.S. Census Bureau estimates, which is more than double the national average. That means almost 1 out of every 3 people in Pontiac is living below the poverty line. And if you're thinking of moving here for affordable housing, think again. Sure, the median home price sits around $120,000, which is well below Michigan's statewide median of $238,000, according to Zillow. But what's the real cost of saving a few bucks on a mortgage? Try underfunded schools, limited job prospects, in neighborhoods where revitalization sounds more like a wish than a plan. Crime isn't exactly doing Pontiac any favors either. Property crimes dominate the stats, and violent crime keeps pace with Michigan's worst. Residents face about a 1 in 61 chance of being a victim of violent crime, compared to 1 in 202 statewide, according to the FBI crime data of 2023. Translation: the odds of running into trouble here are 3 times higher than in the rest of Michigan. Not exactly a selling point for young families or retirees hoping for peace and quiet. And here's the irony. Pontiac pops up on just about every list of worst places to live in Michigan and most dangerous cities in Michigan. So when multiple independent rankings agree, maybe it's not exaggeration, it's reality. But what really seals Pontiac's place on this countdown is the lack of momentum. While other struggling Michigan towns are slowly reinventing themselves with small business initiatives, art scenes, or tech hubs, Pontiac seems stuck in a loop of stalled projects and dashed hopes. Even when the city tries to market itself as an affordable option near Detroit, it still struggles to shake its reputation as a place weighed down by its past. So Pontiac, is it livable? Technically, yes. Is it desirable? That's another story. Unless your dream involves bargain-priced real estate paired with a side of high crime and economic uncertainty, you might want to keep this car in the garage. Number 8, Harper Woods. Harper Woods sounds like it should be the backdrop of a Hallmark movie. Tree-lined streets, friendly neighbors, maybe a coffee shop called the Woods Cafe. Instead, what you actually get feels more like a pilot episode of a crime drama that never got canceled. Nestled on the eastern edge of Detroit, Harper Woods is small, about 15,000 residents, but its problems loom large. Here's the jaw-dropper. The violent crime rate here is roughly 4,057 per 100,000 people, according to Property Code 2024. That's 121% higher than the Michigan state average. To put it plainly, living here means you're more than twice as likely to be a victim of violent crime compared to the rest of the state. Think about that. Would you feel safe walking your dog at night when the odds are stacked against you like that? It doesn't help that Harper Woods often feels like it's overshadowed by Detroit's chaos next door. While the city isn't as big or as infamous as its neighbor, the ripple effects are clear. Crime seeps across borders, and struggling infrastructure doesn't magically stop at city limits. It's like trying to build a sandcastle while the tide's already coming in. Now let's talk money. Median household income here is around $52,000, still below Michigan's average of $68,000 based on the U.S. Census Bureau 2023. The housing market looks cheap at first glance, with median home values sitting around $95,000. But what does a low sticker price really buy you? In Harper Woods, it often means aging homes, declining neighborhoods, and a community where reinvestment feels like a foreign word. Schools aren't offering much hope either. The Harper Woods School District struggles with academic performance, consistently ranking below state averages. Families looking for solid education options are often forced to look elsewhere, and that alone can be a deal breaker for anyone considering a move. The real tragedy of Harper Woods is that it could have been different. Its location near major freeways and the Detroit metro area should make it a prime spot for growth. Instead, it's become a cautionary tale of how proximity to opportunity doesn't guarantee prosperity. So here's the question for you. Would you gamble your safety, your kids' education, and your peace of mind just to save on rent or mortgage? In Harper Woods, that gamble is exactly what you'd be signing up for. And spoiler alert, the house usually wins. Number 7, Jackson. Jackson, Michigan, home of the first state prison in the U.S., and honestly, the city still feels like it hasn't quite escaped its own bars. With a population of about 31,000, Jackson should be the kind of mid-sized town that people settle down, raise families, and enjoy that laid-back Michigan lifestyle. Instead, it's stuck on repeat in all the wrong ways. Crime, poverty, and a reputation that overshadows any charm it may have. Let's get to the numbers. The crime rate here is a staggering 127% higher than the Michigan average, according to FBI crime data. Residents face about a 1 in 84 chance of becoming a victim of violent crime. That's not a roll of the dice anyone wants to take when choosing a place to call home. Want perspective? In safer parts of Michigan, the odds are closer to 1 in 200. Which neighborhood do you think people are more eager to move into? On the economic side, Jackson's median household income hovers around $44,000 based on data from the U.S. Census Bureau, far below Michigan's statewide median of $68,000. That gap means a lot of folks here are struggling to stretch dollars in a city where opportunities don't exactly come out. Compare that with a poverty rate of about 22%, and it's easy to see why Jackson keeps popping up on lists of Michigan's most troubled cities. Housing seems affordable, with median prices in the $120,000 range, but affordability doesn't always equal livability. Aging homes, underfunded neighborhoods, and limited upward mobility make it a tough sell for new families or retirees looking for stability. Schools, not much relief there either. Test scores in Jackson Public Schools consistently fall below state averages, which doesn't inspire confidence for parents considering planting roots. Add to that a struggling local job market and an industrial base that never quite recovered from the economic shifts of the past few decades, and Jackson feels like a place permanently stuck and trying to bounce back. And here's the kicker. Jackson actually has a rich history and even pockets of revitalization efforts, but crime and poverty overshadow the positives. It's like polishing the hood of a car while the engine still won't start. So let's ask the real question. Would you move to a place where the odds of facing violent crime are higher than finding decent job security? Jackson might be trying to reinvent itself, but until crime, income, and education see serious improvement, this town belongs on the avoid list. Number 6, Highland Park. Highland Park is technically its own city, but if you blink while driving through Detroit, you might miss it, and honestly, that might not be the worst thing. This small enclave of around 8,800 people has a reputation that feels larger than life, not in a good way. Once a booming hub of the auto industry, Highland Park is now better known for crime, abandoned homes, and a sense of urban decay that hits you the second you drive down the streets. Let's talk crime, because Highland Park is no lightweight in that department. The violent crime rate sits at a jaw-dropping 4,541 per 100,000 residents. That's nearly 94% higher than the already rough Michigan average. Think about it. In Highland Park, you're far more likely to run into trouble than find a quiet park bench to sip your morning coffee. How comfortable would you feel knowing your odds of becoming a crime victim are among the highest in the state? Economically, things don't look much brighter. The median household income here is less than $28,000, as reported by the U.S. Census Bureau, compared to Michigan's average of $68,000. That gap is wider than Lake Michigan, and it makes everyday living a constant uphill battle. Poverty grips the community, with nearly half of the residents living below the poverty line. Yes, half. That's not a typo, that's a city in crisis. And if you think the housing market is a silver lining, guess again. Sure, median home values hover around $45,000, which is shockingly cheap, but here's the reality. Cheap housing doesn't equal opportunity. It often equals neglect. Many of the homes are abandoned, crumbling, or outright unsafe. When the city has to turn off its streetlights to save money literally, as Highland Park did in the past, you know infrastructure isn't just lacking, it's non-existent. Education? The school system has faced years of turmoil, including closures and takeovers, leaving parents with little confidence in the opportunities for their kids. Combine that with limited local jobs, and it's no wonder many people see Highland Park as a place you move away from, not to. Here's the harsh truth. Highland Park is a city with history and potential, but decades of neglect and disinvestment have left it looking like a ghost of its former self. Unless you're ready to play urban pioneer in one of Michigan's toughest environments, Highland Park is a gamble you probably don't want to take. We're halfway through the countdown. If you are enjoying the video so far, hit the like button, subscribe to Virtual Travel by Brian, and ring the notification bell for more informative content. Let's get back into it. Number 5, Muskegon Heights. If you're looking for a place where struggle feels like the town motto, Muskegon Heights is it. With a population just over 9,900, this city on Michigan's western side has one of the most notorious reputations in the state. It's often described as a place with more problems than people, and sadly, the stats back that up. Crime here isn't just bad, it's legendary. According to FBI Crime Data 2023, residents face a violent crime rate nearly 4 times the national average. Muskegon Heights regularly tops the charts as one of Michigan's most dangerous cities. To put it bluntly, living here means you're rolling the dice every time you step outside your front door. On property crime, let's just say locking your doors is considered a bare minimum. On the financial side, the picture isn't any prettier. The median household income sits around $29,000, less than half of Michigan's statewide median of $68,000, according to the U.S. Census Bureau. Poverty affects more than 35% of the population, making Muskegon Heights one of the poorest cities in the state. That combination of low income and high crime creates an environment where escaping the cycle feels nearly impossible. Now, let's talk housing. Sure, homes here can be found for under $60,000, but ask yourself, is cheap really worth the hype? The low price tag often comes at the cost of safety, stability, and long-term value. And Muskegon Heights proves that point perfectly. It's hard to build wealth when the local housing market is as fragile as a glass house in a windstorm. Education doesn't offer much hope either. The Muskegon Heights School District has faced years of financial troubles, with schools shutting down or being restructured under emergency management. Test scores and graduation rates lag well behind state averages, and for families, that's a deal breaker. What's even more frustrating is the city's location. Muskegon Heights is right next to Muskegon, a community that has seen revitalization through tourism, development, and a growing art scene. But while Muskegon enjoys new life, Muskegon Heights seems permanently stuck in the shadows, unable to catch the same wave. So here's the million-dollar question. Would you risk living in a city where poverty and crime collide on nearly every corner, just because the housing market looks affordable? Muskegon Heights might seem like a bargain on paper, but in reality, it's a place where safety, opportunity, and hope are in short supply. Sometimes, the best deal is the one you walk away from. Number 4, Kalamazoo. Kalamazoo might have one of the catchiest names in Michigan, so catchy there's even a song about it. But don't let the fun name fool you. Behind the quirky reputation lies some very real issues that land this city on the avoid list. With around 73,000 residents, Kalamazoo Kalamazoo is the kind of mid-sized city that should be thriving, especially with its college town vibe. Instead, it often feels like the promise of progress keeps slipping through its fingers. Let's start with safety. Kalamazoo's overall crime rate clocks in at about 6,018 incidents per 100,000 residents, as reported by Property Code 2024. That's 164% above the national average. Translation: crime isn't just a statistic here, it's part of everyday life. Violent crime in particular makes the city notorious, with assault and robbery rates that make people think twice about being out after dark. Economically, the city paints a mixed picture. Yes, it's home to Western Michigan University, has pockets of innovation, but the broader population struggles. Median household income is about $45,000 since the U.S. Census Bureau in 2023, significantly below Michigan's average of $68,000. Poverty affects nearly 25% of residents, and when 1 in 4 people are struggling to get by, no opportunities aren't spread evenly. Housing, at first glance, looks decent. The median home price sits around $170,000, lower than the state's median, but the value of a home means little if you don't feel safe walking out your front door. Add in older housing stock and neighborhoods suffering from disinvestment, and the affordability starts to look less appealing. Now let's talk schools. Kalamazoo public schools often underperform compared to state benchmarks, with test scores and graduation rates trailing behind. For families, this makes the city less attractive, regardless of how many parks or coffee shops it has. Here's what makes Kalamazoo frustrating. It could be great. It has universities, breweries, cultural attractions, and a prime location halfway between Detroit and Chicago. But crime, poverty, and uneven development weigh down the city like a anchor. It's the classic case of potential versus reality. And right now, reality is winning. So the question is, would you take the gamble on Kalamazoo's quirky charm, knowing that statistically you're stepping into one of Michigan's more dangerous environments? For many, the risks outweigh the rewards. A fun name can only carry a city so far, and in Kalamazoo's case, it doesn't carry it nearly far enough. Number 3, Flint. Flint is the city that became a household name for all the wrong reasons. Say Flint anywhere in America, and most people won't think of cars, culture, or history. They'll think of poisoned water. And while the water crisis technically ended years ago, its shadow still looms so large over this city of nearly 80,000 that it's impossible to talk about Flint without mentioning it. But let's start with the bigger picture. Flint's economy collapsed alongside the auto industry that once made it boom. General Motors pulled out, jobs vanished, and poverty filled the vacuum. Today, median household income hovers around $32,000, according to the U.S. Census Bureau, less than half of Michigan's average. Nearly 40% of Flint's residents live below the poverty line, making it one of the poorest cities in the entire nation. Think about that. 4 out of every 10 people struggling to meet basic needs. And crime? Sadly, Flint has become just as famous for that as its water. Violent crime rates consistently rank among the worst in Michigan. Residents face about a 1 in 50 chance of being a victim of violent crime, according to the FBI crime data for 2023. That's not just bad, that's catastrophic. The city has seen improvements since its most dangerous years, but safety remains a major concern. Now back to the water. From 2014 to 2019, Flint endured one of the worst public health disasters in modern American history, when its water supply was contaminated with lead. While officials now say the water meets safety standards, trust doesn't magically repair itself. For many residents, the crisis cemented Flint as a place where government failure had literal life-or-death consequences. Would you want to raise a family in a city where even turning on the tap once meant danger? Housing is cheap, with median home values under $60,000. But cheap doesn't mean good. It often means abandoned houses, blighted neighborhoods, and little chance of building equity. In schools, Flint community schools have faced enrollment declines, funding crises, and performance issues that leave parents with tough choices. Flint is a heartbreaking story because it wasn't always this way. It was once a symbol of America's industrial might, a place where middle-class dreams were built. Now, it's a cautionary tale of what happens when industry collapses and leadership fails. yourself, do you want to bet your safety, your health, and your family's future on a city still reeling from disaster? For most people, the answer is a firm no. Flint may someday rise again, but right now, it's still one of Michigan's places to avoid at all costs. Number 2, Benton Harbor. Benton Harbor sits on the shores of Lake Michigan. Don't let the waterfront fool you. This city is no paradise. With a population of about 8,700, Benton Harbor often ranks as one of the most dangerous places in the state. And the statistics will make your jaw drop. According to Area Vibes 2024, the violent crime rate here hovers around 2,300 per 100,000 residents. That's more than 400% higher than the Michigan average. Translation? In Benton Harbor, trouble isn't hard to find. It's practically your neighbor. And while crime alone is enough to make you think twice, it's far from the city's only problem. Benton Harbor also made headlines for a different crisis, bleeding the drinking water. Starting in 2018, the city faced a water contamination nightmare that mirrored Flint's in both scope and scale. By late 2023, state officials announced the water was finally safe again. But here's the thing. Trust, once broken, doesn't return overnight. Would you pour your kids a glass of water in a city that you spent years handing out bottled replacements? Economically, Benton Harbor hasn't fared much better. Median household income hovers around $27,000, says the U.S. Census Bureau, compared to Michigan's average of $68,000. Nearly half of its residents live below the poverty line, making it one of the poorest cities in the Midwest. With limited job opportunities, many people are stuck in cycles of poverty that feel impossible to escape. Housing here is cheap, but for all the wrong reasons. With median home values around $60,000, you might think you've stumbled onto a bargain. But those bargains often come with high crime, underfunded schools, and infrastructure issues that make homeownership feel less like an investment and more like a burden. Speaking of schools, Benton Harbor area schools have been on life support for years. Chronic underperformance, budget shortfalls, and talk of state intervention have left parents with few good options. And let's be honest, if you're raising a family, education matters just as much as safety and jobs. The irony of Benton Harbor is its location. Sitting right across the river from the charming, tourist-friendly town of St. Joseph, you'd think some of that prosperity would spill over. Instead, the contrast between the two cities is like night and day. One thriving with tourists and beachgoers, the other struggling with crime, poverty, and disinvestment. So here's the real question. Would you risk your health, safety, and financial stability just because a city has lakefront views? In Benton Harbor, the answer is clear. The scenery might be beautiful, but the reality of daily life lands it squarely on Michigan's do not leave here list. Number 1, Detroit. Detroit, a Motor City, Motown, comeback kid. Or at least, that's the story city leaders love to tell. But peel back the flashy headlines about revitalized downtowns and trendy coffee shops, and you'll find a city still wrestling with some of the toughest problems in America. With a population of about 620,000, Detroit is Michigan's largest city, and unfortunately, also its most dangerous. Let's start with crime, because it defines so much of Detroit's reputation. The city's crime rate is an eye-watering 6,389 incidents per 100,000 residents, according to the FBI crime rate in 2023. That's 170% above the national average. The odds of being a victim of violent crime here? About 1 in 44. Compare that to Michigan's state average of 1 in 22, and you see why people say Detroit plays in its own league when it comes to danger. But it's not just about crime, it's about economics. The median household income in Detroit is around $37,000, nearly half of Michigan's $68,000 average, says the U.S. Census Bureau. Poverty affects nearly 32% of residents, meaning almost 1 in 3 Detroiters struggles to make ends meet. Even with new development projects and billions poured into downtown, large swaths of the city remain stuck in decline, where opportunity feels more like a rumor than a reality. Housing tells another part of the story. Yes, you can buy a house in Detroit for less than the price of a used car. The median home value sits around $65,000. But ask anyone who's moved here without doing their homework. Cheap housing can come with very expensive problems. from abandoned properties dragging down entire neighborhoods to infrastructure issues that never seem to get fixed. Affordable in Detroit often translates to high risk. Public health is another hurdle. Years of economic hardship have taken their toll, with infant mortality rates and chronic disease prevalence far higher than the state average, according to the Guardian, 2019. Access to reliable health care remains a challenge for many, leaving families vulnerable in ways most suburbs never experience. Here's what makes Detroit so complicated. It does have bright spots. Downtown and Midtown are seeing growth, young professionals are moving into lofts, and tech companies are trying to rebrand the city as a hub of innovation. But step a few blocks outside those areas, and the story changes dramatically. Empty lots, boarded up homes, and crime statistics that make you think twice about staying after dark. So, should you move to Detroit? Unless you're prepared for the city's realities, crime, poverty, and infrastructure struggles, it's a gamble most people won't win. Detroit is a place of resilience and history, no doubt, but right now it tops the list of Michigan towns you should never move to. And there you have it, 10 towns in Michigan you should never move to. From struggling economies to sky-high crime, these places prove that not every corner of the Great Lakes State is a dream destination. Which city shocked you the most? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, smash that like button, and subscribe to Virtual Travel by Brian for more eye-opening content. Thank you for watching. Some towns in Virginia will chew up your paycheck, your patience, and maybe even your peace of mind. And that's why we're diving into 10 towns in Virginia you should never move to. Worst places to live in Virginia right now. Sure, Virginia is known for its rich history, charming landscapes, and booming real estate markets. But let's be real, there's a darker side that glossy brochures and relocation ads won't show you. Behind the postcard photos are Virginia cities battling high crime rates, economic decline, and even environmental concerns that would make anyone think twice about putting down roots. Add in shaky housing markets and struggling infrastructure, and you've got places where Virginia living feels less like southern comfort and more like survival mode. So before you pack your bags for the so-called best cities in the United States or gamble on the Virginia housing market, stay tuned. These are the towns to avoid in Virginia if you value stability, safety, and lifestyle. This is your Virginia travel guide with a twist, because not every town deserves a spot on your dream list. Stick around, hit that subscribe button, and let's count down the towns that give Virginia a better name. Number 10, Richmond. Crime and poor health outcomes shouldn't be the first things that come to mind when you think of a state capital. But in Richmond, they top the list more often than they should. On paper, Richmond is dripping with history and culture. It's the birthplace of Arthur Ashe, home to the famous Monument Avenue, and has a food scene that could make even New Yorkers jealous. But peel back that glossy brochure, and you'll find a city that's still paying the price for decades of redlining, segregation, and poor planning. Let's get to the numbers, because they speak louder than the marketing slogans. Richmond's violent crime rate is roughly twice the national average, and its property crime isn't much better, leaving residents feeling like they need Fort Knox level security just